we bring this multidimensional reality into something practical within one system. To do so, I have kind of 4 steps that are linear steps in a sense, but I look at them as a spiral. So instead of going in a line as a 1, 2, 3, 4, it's more like, imagine you walking on a spiral staircase. And now 1, 2, 3, 4, by the time you get back to 1, you're actually on the next rung up of your staircase. So you're forever evolving. That's the quantum evolution process in your transcension. And yet you are still kind of going through similar steps that are overall one on top of another at this point, not in a linear line. So the components of this process is always begins with self-love. So self-love, it's a way to see yourself as a component of divinity and to open up to receive. Without that piece, there's always going to be difficulty, because when we think we have to earn receiving, when we think we have to do something to be good enough in order to create something, that's part of sabotaging the wealth energetics. So this is the step where we literally connect to this beautiful magnetic energy of unconditional love. So this is love that is not linear. This is love that is not personal, but this is love that then is applied compassionately onto oneself. So then you actually feel yourself loved by the universe. So another way of saying it for some people who universe might be too big, think of it like being loved by your own higher self or your own soul. And the part that's being loved is the wounded child or the hurt part of you. So it's internal dynamics of that love process. And when my clients go through this process, a lot of times there's so much magic that begins to happen, because they might be starting with all these voices in their head. Like I have one client who had all this inner me about like, oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I can't do it. Oh, I'm not ready. I'm not quite there. Or like all this judgment. So when we started looking at that, it's clear that the voice had a quality of her father, and it had quality of a lot of other things that sort of happened throughout the life that's matching that father's voice. So when we look further back, you can see that this is a karmic pattern. And it's always a self-defense. Ability to love ourselves is pre-installed. When we don't love ourselves, it's because of something that is blocking that due to us defending against the environment that told us that it's not okay to be in the ocean of love. So if somebody was mean to us or didn't include us, or we felt disconnected, or there was cruelty or abuse of some sort, some painful experiences, then the inner world of ours translates that as, oh, it's not safe to be this open, so I better, block this whole heart thing and receiving thing, because, well, if I'm open to receiving, these bad things come. So then I just not going to receive. And a lot of times I see people try to kind of like heal this lack of self-love or self-judgment or some misalignment with their love energy, like not worthy or whatever, by saying like, oh, I shouldn't feel that, I should feel good. And I always look at it like, let's honor the part of you that doesn't feel worthy, because she's doing this out of love for you. It's just immature solution. And we want a mature one where you actually open up. But at the time where you were maybe 2 years old and you were abused, that was the only solution you could come up with. So your energy field was actually protecting you. So all of that is the step 1, the self-love. Then we move on to the next step, which is sovereignty. Sovereignty is when you are living in alignment with who you are. This is about having a boundary. This is about having your destiny clear. This is about knowing what you want to do and then being able to work with that energy. So this is where a lot of times people are in this confusion about, but how do I commit to things? How do I have a boundary? If I have the boundary, that gets mistranslated into protection. And I'm completely not for the protection. I think we should live undefended. But if you are sovereign, then your frequency will be a natural filter. So that's what acts as a boundary, instead of you having to put up energy shields and all this stuff to protect from something that you think is bad for you. So in a big sense of things, we only attract what is necessary for us anyway. So if you are attracting something that is negative or painful, it's always in that stage about looking at where are you not being sovereign? Where are you buying into whatever the programming that you have that's letting you have that? So that's usually the victim component in there that needs to be cleaned up. So at that stage, clients usually look at this internal sovereignty or lack of it, where they maybe over blend it with the parent. and kind of like start to behave and become subconsciously as somebody. And I mean, somebody could be 60, 70, 80 years old now and still have this issue. So I'm not just talking about little children, but we all take karmic imprints, activations from our parents usually. It could be other people too, but usually it's the immediate caregivers. So that does not mean they originate with the parents. It means usually that there's a karmic pattern that drags along from other lifetimes. But parents are the activators of that pattern for us, kind of like the teachers of it, by making it show up in your field. So looking for where are you sovereign and where are you not. So relating this to the wealth energetics, that would be like if somebody's trying to protect from life and constantly putting up shields and everything, they are utilizing all of their energy on that. And in doing so, they're actually blocking abundance of the universe. So then in their mind, the linear dualistic thinking, it becomes, okay, either a shield or no shield. So if I take the shield off, then I'm exposed to bad things, but then abundance supposedly can come in. But if I have the shield, then I feel safe, but now abundance cannot come in. And that's not true. That's a dualistic small box. So I would take it out to the next level. And I actually had a couple of clients like that too, where we literally did this adjustment from like, okay, you're thinking of your boundary as something that you have to say no to life. So what if we shift that you're sovereign, which means your frequency occupies certain space, like time space, right? We take certain space and within linear time, this is our space. Okay, that space is yours. Now, what do you want in this domain? Like, what are your rules? What are your standards of, whatever you believe in? What are your principles? So write up sort of your own book of principles for that domain that is your space-time. Now that is the rule, tell that to the universe and follow through with it yourself. So now you're not saying yes or no to anything. You're just being open and undefended, but with clear rules for your system. And rules, some people don't like that word, so you can think of it as principles or standards. It's essentially frequency parameters. So it's like a filter. Like if something comes into your door and says, hey, I'm a negative frequency, and you're saying, okay, come right in, it can come right in. But if you have an internal rule or principle that says, no, that frequency, I just send it love to, but it cannot enter. No, that frequency got to go away. It will bounce off your field. So that's the sovereignty stage. The next level, the number 3, there's 4. Number 3 is authority. At that place, you are enter into the realm of who are you here. This is the part that I think a lot of times spiritual people skip. They kind of want to go from the lower self, wounded self, straight into the soul self, spiritual being that's practically all ascended master. When actually they're in between steps, and these steps are about having a healthy ego, having some desires in life, being able to follow through on your word. That's part of that, because without that, nothing happens. And then if that is done properly, now the inner child, the wounded part, gets parented correctly, because you are being grown-up authority. So now your kid is not trying to run the show and freaking out, but actually being parented because you're running the show, which is how it's supposed to be. The ego is moving forward. The more we do that, the more the ego starts to align with the higher self. And as that happens over time, ego becomes transparent. So I don't believe that ego disappears. I think as long as you live in this world, you kind of need one, but ego got a bad rap. It got this whole thing like, oh, that means you're egocentric and you're bad and you're selfish. Some level of selfishness is actually healthy. That's individuality. So if you don't have it, then you don't have an individual self. And without individual self, you do not have a vortex. And in order to attract wealth in any way, including health for your body, you need to actually be able to be an anchor point for a vortex, which means ego, which is the authority down here on the material plane, is necessary. It's just ideally, it's not having its own agenda. It's having now an agenda that is the higher self agenda. It just kind of like follows what the higher part of us wants, but you still need to be able to function here. So that's the stage of authority. And this is where we figure out sort of how to function in this world. One of the main issues at this stage that people have is being ungrounded and uncommitted. They kind of like do things halfway, half-heartedly, and then they wonder why it's not working. Part of that is because they try to see like, will I get what I want from doing this thing? And if I'm not sure, well, then I'm not going to fully commit. And one thing I can tell you is that we create our good fortune or our bad luck. And the good fortune is created by being committed. And the bad luck is created by being uncommitted. So anytime you do a task, do it committedly. Even if you're just washing dishes, commit to fully wash dishes greatly. Like it doesn't matter what it is. But if you're doing whatever you're doing sort of kind of halfway, then you're essentially setting yourself on having bad luck, like having a bad fortune. By fortune, what I mean is not some, like luck as in good, bad luck from that standpoint, but as in when the universe brings to you things and opens up your path, that's what we can say good fortune. When the universe puts things on your path from the ego perspective, that's translated as bad fortune or bad luck. When actually the reason universe does it, it doesn't care. It's neutral. It doesn't speak English. It speaks frequency. So the reason it puts things on your path is not because it doesn't like you. It's because you're putting out the energy that says, I haven't resolved this yet. So universe says, okay, there's this block on your path. So you get to look at it and deal with it. So if we're having a bad luck, it's because we keep attracting things that we have to deal with that we, for whatever reason, avoided dealing with. So that's the authority component. So this is as I said, the ungrounded and commitment issues come up at this stage. And a lot of clients that I have, like I can give you an example of one guy that I had in my program. He was always looking to go up there to the divine, to something, and his life was really not working. Like materially things were just falling apart, but he kept trying to get somewhere. And when we started from the self-love, it's like, okay, I will only love myself when I get to a higher level of consciousness. You can see the problem here. So that had to be adjusted. Then the sovereignty, like, oh, I have no boundary because I'm divine being. Well, yeah, but if you live in the material world, you kind of still need to have a boundary. So we had to work on getting that to happen. And then at the authority stage, it was about like, are you committed to the journey of being a human being that brings divinity in? Because if you're trying to leave, that's kind of like trying to die. Well, we're all going to get there eventually. But if you actually want to live as a conscious being so that you impact this world and change morphogenic fields and upgrade the consciousness of humanity, which is what he wanted, well, then you need to be grounded here and have a link there. So that's what we were doing at that stage. So then he could actually live in this lifetime and expand his wealth container and attract what he needs for his life here while having access. And actually, the more he went down to ground and to bring life into the ego personality and healing some of these lower self issues, the more higher frequencies opened up for him. Because that's the fortune, right? That's the good fortune. The universe then opens up the path for you because you are in the right place. So that's the step 3. And now the 4th component is mastery. So mastery is when you are living your life with all these components in place. So this is about kind of like walking your talk. So you're not just reading a book and thinking, wow, this is amazing. And then you go back into the kitchen to make your tea and now you're in self-judgment. This is not about like, attending a class or meditation or something where you're in this amazing higher frequency. And then as soon as you're out the door and you see, that somebody parked their car, not the way you like it, you're all in, anger. So all these little things are lack of self-mastery. So at this stage, we really work with how are you integrating all these things so that it's actually part of your life. Like, are you fully living? So a lot of it means that you kind of have to have an observer, within yourself. So you're not just fully participant in everything, but your participant and part of you is observing. So you're able to see like, oh, here I'm doing it again. Oh, here's this voice is going on. No judgment, just witnessing it. And then I have different techniques as to how to align that so that you can actually take it in, resonate with it correctly, and upgrade the energy to live consciously in your life with all this multidimensional stuff. So the result of all these 4 steps, and we go through them on and on and on. So in my Transcension Gate community, we do this 1 month per each step, and then we repeat the process and repeat the process. So every time you go deeper and deeper and deeper with different exercises and guidance. But as you do that, you mature as a conscious being. You actually transcend. So you move beyond this concept of I ascend frequency, like ascension, but you go into transcension. You become a being that is, in Hindu, they call it Siddhi, Siddhi. So that's the next level of divinity within us as human beings, but it arrives as a natural progression of us waking up. not by us trying to leave, not by us trying to forever fix our issues. We're not broken. We don't need fixing, but we do need to be harmonized and bring conscious awareness to these components I was talking about, and then have certain processes to monitor how we're doing with them. Half of the time it's just noticing that, oh my God, the way that, let's say, this person, speaks to herself in her head is never going to be the way she would ever speak to anybody else. And it's like, okay, why are you speaking to yourself this way? Like, there's a discrepancy here. That's minimizing Wells container, and that's minimizing her ability to become a transcended being. So then her journey would be not about being nice in the world, she already is, but about internally learning how to just be in love with herself and have clarity of authority. For somebody else, it might be saying no. They are a yes person because they've been programmed with that from, being scared to not be included, or that somebody might be upset with them. So they become this people pleaser that always says yes. And then they read spiritual books that say, oh, say yes to life. And then they think, oh, okay, I'm doing it greatly. And then nothing is working. And the reason for that is because if your ego personality does not know what is healthy, what is not, which means it never says no, then how do you gonna get to the higher self? The ego can only become transparent once you have it. So you kind of first have to actually build that component in a healthy way, in a way that allows you to be centered on your own process, and then resonating this good fortune into the world. And then from that place, yes, you get to upgrade it into soul self. If you want to check out more detailedly what I'm talking about, definitely visit my website. That is transcensiongate.com. On that website, there are many, many things and hundreds of pages, literally, of free material. There is a button there in the menu called Library, Transcension Library. If you click that, you will see over 100 different posts and publications that all on explaining different components of transcension and understanding of yourself and so on. So definitely, if you're the type that wants to dig into this information and play with that, go for that. You can also find me on YouTube. Just type in my name, Eugenia Oganova, and you will see my channels. But mainly on that website, transcensiongate.com. Within that, there's, in the Transcension Gate library, there is the self-love challenge. So if you want to play with that, you can also do that. That's a free little 5-day experiment on you learning to love yourself better. And of course, you are welcome to join us in the Transcension Gate community. So that is a paid community, but if you are ready for that step, I would love to have you. We just finished the Quantum Evolution course, which will be available when it's completed. And then we're going into the connection with the Solar Council, which are multidimensional beings I work with, and translation of your personal efforts onto affecting planetary consciousness and human consciousness. So the next year, 2023, we are going fully into exploration of how you can actually help this planet and humanity awaken, and what is your personal role in that process.